It has now been nearly 3 years since the Apple Silicon transition began with the M1 MacBook Air, Mac Mini, and MacBook Pro. And I'm just gonna pause there while you stare at your computer in disbelief and at the realization that it's been 3 years since this thing came out. Like, what the hell? How did that happen? But given that we are somehow at that 3-year anniversary, I thought it would be worth asking the question, is the M1 MacBook Air still the king? When this thing came out at a $1,000 price tag, it absolutely smoked the rest of the industry. This was the best value laptop, full stop, period, end of sentence. But is that still the case? Because you no longer have to pay $1,000 to get one of these laptops. In fact, I paid just $300 for this one. So given the current landscape and the newer MacBook Airs, the PC competition, is this thing still the king? Today, we're gonna find out after this quick word from today's video sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Eufy and their incredible X9 Pro hands-free all-in-one robot vacuum. This thing is legitimately an all-in-one cleaning assistant. It comes equipped with 5,000 pascals of cleaning suction and a tangle-free rubber roller, and with dual spinning mop heads, it can even mop your floors. And you don't even have to worry about getting your carpets wet. Thanks to carpet detection and auto lift tech, you can seamlessly transition from mop to carpet without getting your carpets wet at all. And with iPath and AI map laser technology, X9 Pro can effortlessly create detailed maps of your space, allowing you to designate rooms and cleaning schedules through the Eufy Clean app. And that means you can select individual rooms for cleaning. It's really handy. I was genuinely impressed with how good the X9 Pro is. I named him Paul, by the way, and he was an absolute trooper. He was able to move across bumpy surfaces and around furniture legs without getting stuck once, and he can detect when his mops need to be cleaned, so he goes back to his little home, cleans them, and then goes back and picks up right where he left off. And with clean and dirty water storage in Paul's house, it would definitely take me a couple full cleans of this apartment to need to refill anything. And because Paul has rotational mops, he doesn't leave streaks on your floors. It's really great. To learn more about the Eufy X9 Pro, check out the links in the description below. A huge thanks to Eufy for sponsoring this video and supporting the channel, and a huge thanks to Paul for cleaning my floors. Now let's get back to the video. So it's no secret that the M1 MacBook Air was a resounding success. That keynote moment was not a word of exaggeration. This thing absolutely took over the laptop world. I mean, it was the go-to recommendation for pretty much 90% of people. And it's still extremely impressive that this base model, run-of-the-mill, entry-level MacBook can compete with any laptop that was manufactured before it. And I know because I've got one. Here's a 2019 15-inch MacBook Pro. This thing, when it was new, cost $3,899. It's got an 8-core i9, 32 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM, a terabyte of storage, dedicated Radeon Pro 560X graphics. And yet when you fire up Cinebench 2024, you'll find that it barely outperforms this base model MacBook Air. I even fired up GFX Bench Metal to find out if the dedicated graphics could compete with the SoC integrated 7-core GPU on this base model M1 MacBook Air, and it can't. The MacBook Air is faster in most cases. That is absolutely ludicrous. That's the benefit of optimization and efficiency. And keep in mind, this is literally the least powerful Apple Silicon machine that exists. You cannot get any less powerful than this, and it's already beating one of the most powerful Intel MacBooks ever made. Oh, and by the way, it did all of that without a fan, and it used less battery in the process. I ran Cinebench twice on the MacBook Air, only once on the MacBook Pro, and then I ran GFX Bench on both. The 15-inch MacBook Pro is at 45%, the MacBook Air is at 60%. It's like, it's not even that close. This is how crazy the transition to Apple Silicon has become, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Luke, we've seen all of this before. It's a 4-year-old MacBook Pro, and we all know how good the M1 MacBook Air is. But the point is that when this machine was brand new and this was only a year old, this was 1/4 the price. Given all of this information, this machine absolutely tanked in value. Nobody would want to pay 4 times the money for this old thing when you could just buy an M1 MacBook Air. In fact, $500 is an outright bargain for this machine. And if you go on eBay and try to cross-shop one of these MacBook Airs, you're gonna find it's not much more expensive than one of these. This is a 2017 Touch Bar 13-inch MacBook Pro. This thing sucks, okay? It's got a Kaby Lake dual-core i5. It's absolutely hot garbage. It's slower than an iPhone 10. It's got 4 Thunderbolt ports, so at the very least, there's something there. It's also got twice the storage, half a terabyte. But quite frankly, wouldn't take any of those trades for $1 billion because this thing sucks to use. Compared to an M1 MacBook Air, I mean, are you joking? You guys saw what happened when an M1 went up against an 8-core i9. How do you think a dual-core U-series i5 from 6 years ago? Yeah, no, it's not even close. So this thing has a fraction of the capability. Plus, it's hotter, it runs hot, it runs loud, and the battery life sucks. This one also likes to kernel panic a lot, so that's fun. No offense if anyone bought one of these recently, but are you like okay? Do you need a doctor? Because why would you buy this piece of garbage with a butterfly keyboard when you can get an M1 MacBook Air for like $100 extra? Come on. And the thing about the M1 MacBook Air is it's arguably just as relevant now as it was 3 years ago. I know that there's a new MacBook Air. In fact, oh, what a surprise, I've got it here on my table. Bet you didn't expect that. And don't get me wrong, this thing is excellent. I think it's a very decent and noticeable improvement over the M1, right? You've got the new design with new color options. I absolutely love Starlight. I absolutely adore the design for this new generation of MacBook Air. It is ridiculously thin, ridiculously light. It has fantastic battery life, a gorgeous display, and a very powerful chip at a great price. You know, $10.99, you can buy these things refurbished because it came out about a year and a half ago. Like, you can absolutely make the case for the M2 MacBook Air. But the M1 MacBook Air gives you maybe 90% of this at still a couple $100 lower price point. Yeah, sure, Apple still sells this for $1,000, but you're not gonna buy it from Apple for $1,000 because you have so many options. You can shop Apple refurbished. If you wanna save an even larger amount of money, you can go look for a Best Buy sale or find one that's Amazon renewed. If you wanna save a lot of money, you can go on eBay and buy one from another person like you or me who's just selling it as they're getting ready to upgrade. Maybe they wanna get the new M2 MacBook Air and boom, you've scored yourself a discount. Or you can be ridiculous like me and buy a broken M1 MacBook Air for $150 off of Mercari and then buy a screen and fix it yourself, at which point you've saved a ludicrous amount of money. I spent $333 on this M1 MacBook Air, and I quite frankly cannot think of a single piece of technology that is a better deal than this at that price. I mean, come on. You've got every single feature. You've got a chip that Apple is still selling in the iMac, so it's not even outdated. And if it wasn't enough that this MacBook Air could save you a couple $100 over an M2, it also has a faster SSD. Because remember, with the M2 generation, Apple is only using a single NAND chip on the base models, whereas with the M1 devices, they have 2, which means you get basically twice the SSD speed. It's very simple. So yeah, you're saving money, you get a faster SSD, and you get 90% of everything else. A great display, a great design, fanless architecture, phenomenal battery life, and great performance. That's pretty hard to argue with. So at this point, you might be wondering, Luke, what's the downside? Where's the catch? It can't just be all positives, right? Yeah, it can. It's basically all positives. The only thing that is remotely a downside with this MacBook Air is that it's the old design. It's a little thicker, a little heavier, and doesn't look quite as modern. That's the trade-off. Think of this as a MacBook SE, okay? It's got all of the modernity of Apple Silicon in the previous generation design, but with a fixed keyboard, so don't worry about that. That's basically what this thing is. And there's no inherent downside to that. It just means that you save a little money and you're not rocking the newest and latest, greatest design. That's all there really is to it. I mean, these things have been out for 3 years, and as far as I'm aware, there's no reliability concerns. And one way that you can tell that's the case is by looking at broken MacBook Airs being sold on eBay. Believe you me, I looked through a lot of those when I was trying to find this computer to repair, and the most common thing that I saw all the time is liquid damage, a cracked display, or an iCloud lock. Those are user-created issues. I couldn't find a single listing where it seemed like a logic board had just died or some fault with the machine had killed it. It was all user-created issues. This isn't even a review. This is just a rant about how good this MacBook Air is. When this generation of MacBook Air came out in 2018, the consensus at the time was basically, yeah, okay, the MacBook Air is fine, provided that all you're doing is iMessage, photos, email, and web browsing, and nothing else. But now we've flipped the script completely. I now argue to most people like, well, why would you need any more than a MacBook Air? What are you doing that demands more than what a MacBook Air can offer? That's a pretty major paradigm shift in the way that you look at these computers. It used to be, well, if you can get away with the base model, go for it. Now it's, why would you need anything more than the base model for 90% of people? That is a legitimately crazy thing to have happen in such a short amount of time. So yeah, the moral of the story here is, if you need an computer, your default choice should be a MacBook Air, and probably an M1 at that. The M2 is great, don't get me wrong, but my goodness, it is hard to beat the value that this thing provides. Legitimately, absolutely incredible. I think this is going to be the crowned champion of MacBooks for years to come. A couple years ago, it would have been the mid-2015 15-inch MacBook Pro, but that has been unseated. This is it. This is the default, the best bang for your buck, the undefeated reigning champion. And you should absolutely buy one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.